Would you do anything differently if you were hospitalized due to a penicillin allergy and had a short visit with a long-dead loved one? The narrator of today's story experienced that exact thing. Anaphylactic shock from a penicillin allergy took his mother's life, but he got to see her again. You may find this narration, along with most of my others, on the NDE website. Okay, get comfortable, grab a hot drink, and get ready to be engrossed in today's journey. My stomach stuck out as I lay on the examination cart at the hospital. A nurse was giving me a shot of penicillin. Before this injection, I had never had an unpleasant reaction to penicillin. As soon as the nurse began injecting the drug, I started to feel negative effects. My ears began to ring and soon became much worse. My heart rate started racing and kept going up. My field of vision started to be encircled by a rim. As it shrank in toward the center, I couldn't see past the brown border with faint dots. My jaw felt like it was about to drop at any second. I spat out the piece of gum I was chewing on because I was afraid I would choke. I was using both hands to hammer on the side of the metal wagon in an effort to maintain consciousness. My best guess is that the nurse was shouting "Code Blue." Apparently, my heart rate was 180 beats per minute. As my chest heaved, I could feel my heart failing. The commenter made the observation, "We're losing him." My fear made me feel like I was about to pass out. Whether silently or in my thoughts, the words, "Save me, Jesus," kept coming back to me. As a cyclone of brilliant reds and whites engulfed me, I distinctly recall shouting, "Save me, Jesus." A majestic being, its arms spread wide, appeared out of nowhere from what appeared to be a pool smack dab in the center of this enormous field. Incredible light, but nothing unique. Suddenly, I was in a completely dark space with only a brilliant white dot that seemed as distant as a distant star. Suddenly, something white formed right in front of my eyes as if I were being propelled toward it at the speed of light. Imagine you're sitting in a dark theater, staring at a white screen. There were no obvious borders, but the whiteness was overwhelming. But I had no clue that a form existed. I was only there. Too, was terrified by the incident. It was at some point that I either heard or felt the words, "Do not be afraid." I have no idea where that came from, but it was real. Furthermore, I went through something that I can only define as being fully aware of my surroundings. A more accurate description would have been, "Oh yeah, I get it," rather than a chronological account of my life events. However, this in no way diminished the gravity of what I understood. My narcissism became apparent to me. The effect my death would have on my family, especially my father, was something I was very cognizant of. Just over 2 years prior to my ordeal, my family had recently lost Mom. When I saw or imagined my brothers carrying my coffin, I was overcome with grief. My dad was overcome by his emotions. It was not a flat starkness that was before me. Viewed from this angle, what appeared to be a large boulder could be made out. The whiteness or mist appeared to recede gradually as I stared into this depth at the boulder. It was a massive boulder, and its colors varied from mostly gray to a rainbow of tones. There was moss growing on it. Even though I could see depth beyond it, it felt more like seeing through a glass block or fog into a verdantness. As the white fog slowly lifted, revealing a human form, I could discern what seemed like a humanoid off in the distance, to the left of the boulder. Then I saw that it was a lady. She was dressed in a robe of chocolate brown, which she fastened around her waist with a cream-colored chain. Brown, wavy hair that fell to her shoulders fell loosely down her back. As the fog lifted from her face, I could make out her smile. With her arms slightly extended from her body, she leaned forward slightly. I knew full well that the hazy white fog was still encircling her lower half. She failed to convey any meaning to me through either her words or her ideas. You could feel her aura. When it came to outward attractiveness, she was unmatched on this world. Felt a profound calmness descend upon me. Her identity didn't immediately pop into my head, But eventually it did. Just who was that? The woman I call Mum. Despite my lack of familiarity with her in this attire, it was my mom. It was impossible to look away from her classic good looks. It remains elusive despite your best efforts. When I last saw her, her body was a wreck, cancer's after effects having left it unusable. But there she was, more stunning than anything my imagination had conjured up. It was only a feeling that she was anticipating my arrival. There was no need for me to dash over to her. I knew in that split second that crossing would be the end of me if I mustered the courage to continue ahead. My father had already lost my mother, and the thought of losing me would cause him unimaginable agony. Was also overwhelmed by a lack of life experience and a feeling of meaninglessness. It seemed obvious to me that he wouldn't survive. I pleaded with Jesus, saying, "Please, send me back." I was whisked away to the exam room all over again, with a cacophony of voices all around. As far as I was concerned, time had halted, despite my inability to identify it. The sensation is as fresh in my mind as if it had happened only yesterday. The face of the doctor who had prescribed the shot materialized once that sensation subsided. My first words were, "Am I in hell?" Following this, "I wouldn't call it that," he said while laughing. I was so put off by the doctor's physical appearance that I had to say so. To me, he resembled a claymation figure in that he seemed to be constructed entirely of clay. His moles, scars, and wrinkles stood out more than anyone else's, but that was the only real difference. There were a lot of people wandering about, and some of them were even looking out the open doorway into the hallway. In my mind, these were all claymation figures. As time went on, they appeared less out of the ordinary and more commonplace. I really hoped that someone would call my sister and get her to the hospital immediately. After her arrival and recognition, I felt everything would be all right. We have completed our experience for the day. As usual, I'm looking forward to reading everyone's thoughts in the designated area. I pray that you are protected and that blessings come your way till we meet again.